Welcome back. As we promised our dear viewers that our second segment is going to tackle tolerance. The word tolerance is such a concept. Is it a basic instinct? Meaning that some people were born tolerant and others they have no tolerance, so it's unfair to ask them to practice something which they do not have in their own character, or they were not born with it. Is it a kind of weakness, for example? How to differentiate between being tolerant and being weak or negative? We are going to have all these answers from Dr. Samaah Khamis, the Honorary Ambassador of Egypt for Peace, and also she is a life coach. So in detail, she is going to answer all our questions. Thank you very much for being with us, ma'am, and have a very good morning first.
Thank you. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Dr. Samaah. And let's first talk about the definition of tolerance, because it might be a confusion to many Egyptians. I mean, we have been people of a nation who have been recognized as tolerant people, and in the sense of tolerating Muslims and Christians and those, I mean, major concepts. But when it comes to real tolerance in daily life, the values that should be injected in the siblings, you do not find it.
So basically, yes, the concept of tolerance is allowance, is actually to understand, to accept, to endure what you think is different. So that is basically the definition of tolerance. And as we can see, this is a major concept that we need to acquire, which comes back to your note at the beginning. Is it acquired or innate? It is acquired. It is a quality that we need to be trained to actually pertain, and it needs some kind of maturity, of understanding, of permissiveness to actually understand that there's always the other, there's always somebody or something that is different from how we are, and that needs some kind of acceptance, not rejection. That is really a major concept, which once we embrace, life actually differs, our life differs, and life of others as well. So it is important.
I've asked this question in specific. I introduced our segment with these differences because, for example, here even in Egypt, you would find people saying about our people in Aswan, for example, oh, they are very much tolerant. So you are going just to enjoy dealing with them. But for example, those close to the sea, they are enjoying hot temper, and they are all the time shouting, or they do have a loud voice or stuff like that. Even in the one country, you would find differences among people all over the country. Why? I mean, is it the atmosphere, for example, around them? Is it the way they were raised? What?
All right, for any acquired characteristic, there are certain measures or ways, tools, for this to be instilled in one's character. The very first measure is, for example, the way he is exposed to the outer world. That comes through the family, it comes through the society itself. So once that person starts dealing with others, he starts to understand more about tolerance. The ones who are actually guiding him, and of course the common sense is the parents, they would actually guide him to see how he should view others and how he should deal with them. So that is his first encounter with life in general, with the society in general. So therefore we have to stress the importance of the way parents are actually dealing with their kids, the way teachers are dealing with their students, what values are they instilling in these children. So once the child or the person sees that the society is actually enhancing and providing him with tools to endure the other, to understand, I mean by the other meaning the ones who are different, be it different in race, in religion, in whatever form. Once he starts being subjected to this attitude, he gets to acquire more level of tolerance. By that, he sees life in a wider scope. He sees others in different lights. So it's not like black and white. It is not like I have to be there to judge others. I'm actually there to accept others. And actually this is a very important notion that was enhanced even by God. In all religions, we've been asked to tolerate. We've been asked to accept, not to judge. So, and this is a very important notion, because others, usually people, those who are intolerant, they always see whoever is different as threatening. It's like, I have to go by a certain code or a certain, set of values. And whoever is against these values, then he is a threat to me, and he's a threat to my inner peace and existence.
Yes.
So therefore, I have to be aggressive, and I have to be violent, and I have to actually despise that person, which is not the case. Actually, if he exists, that person who is different exists, then God actually meant it to be this way. And therefore, I have to be accepting of the fact that this person actually exists the way he is.
What you're saying is really deserve a lot of respect and chapeau to what you're saying, because how would you deliver that to society? Because you're saying, you're talking very, very good values about if God created that particular thing or creature, then he deserves to have full right existence on earth and share this earth with you. A lot of elements in life need that concept, and there are many problems in our life, in our society, that are related to the lack of that concept that was not injected, or that was not put, that was not taught to youngsters.
That's right.
Like special activities for women, like the environment, like the animal rights, like some people's minorities' rights, like kids with disabilities, like kids with difficulties in learning, you name it.
That's right.
It's vital in life. So as an international ambassador for international peace, what do you suggest that we should do in order to be able to change, really, effect a quick change in community, to be able to change that?
Well, I see that you're actually focusing on the larger scope, which is the community and the society, which is a good thing, of course. But if you need a quick change, it will never happen through that wider scope.
Maybe a campaign.
It should actually happen. I think I'm not only an ambassador, I'm also a life coach. So when it comes to life coaching, this is what we do on an individual basis.
Yeah.
And I think this is what we really need to concentrate on. Once we talk about society, it's really very difficult to entice or to actually make a change that is so quick and wide on that large scope. But you can actually make a change on the individual level. So that is what we as life coaches do. We work with people individually, those who are actually eager to change, those who really want to see life in a different perspective, and we help them do that. So one thing we need to know is that this concept of tolerance is actually part of the way our subconscious mind is programmed. It is programmed through, as I said, different elements like parents, like teachers, anyone that I deal with on the outer world. These experiences lead to a certain programming in my subconscious mind. So I now know that, for example, when I see a person with a disability, I have to, for example, to eye him with a look of shock, or whatever attitude I've acquired, I'll be doing. So this is what we call programming. Once we change this kind of programming, once we see that this is not how I should react whenever I see a person that I would label as different, and that this should not mean that I should despise him or just set him aside, but actually that I should be opening up, I should be accepting that difference, I should be learning more from it. If this is how I am programmed, then my attitude will change. I remember Stephen Covey, who is one of the international people in the human development field. He actually told us that between the action and reaction, there is always a space, and that space is called the space of me. I mean, I will find myself through that space. So instead of always reacting a certain way, I can give myself a space and think, and then change the way I behave, which will move me from being a reactive person to a proactive person. In this case of tolerance, for example, if I were taught in my childhood to react in a certain way whenever I encounter a person who is different, that I should reject him, for instance, if I give myself some kind of space and think, why do I always behave in this way? Why do I react this way? Why shouldn't I change the way I see things and see people? Then I'll become a proactive person. And once I do that, once I use this space between the action and the reaction, a lot can happen. Actually, my entire life can change. So one way of doing it is by being tolerant. By being tolerant, some people may think that tolerant is is passive, tolerant is weak. And actually, this is not the case at all. Tolerance demands a of understanding and maturity and spirituality in some cases. So by doing that, you're actually others, and that is definitely it actually also falls under the energy that is of a higher level energy. We have a higher level energy and a lower level energy. So anger, despise, rejection all falls under the lower negativity of the energy level. So once you get involved in that, you'll be pulling yourself downward. The more tolerant you are, the higher your energy level is, and therefore
and the more happy you are.
Exactly.
More feeling comfort.
And you'll be liberated because you're liberating yourself from the ties of intolerance.
That there are changes in the Egyptian character. And when it comes to the daily routine, to the stresses we have, to the political atmosphere, even to the economic crises, to whatever, you name it, something changed. And unfortunately, there is such a mix between looking religious or looking with those religious aspects, unfortunately, only to regarding the appearances. Oh, this is a sheikh or this is a veiled woman, so she is going to be that tolerant and she is going to behave that nice. This is not the case at all. How we can differentiate first, and how we should not have this mix, because it's not true. And once again, how can we try to separate ourselves from the stresses around us to keep our tolerant nature as Egyptian? Because I think it's our forgive me if I'm ignorant in this, but there's something which called a collective consciousness. So our collective consciousness is saying that we have been tolerant, or maybe more tolerant before, but through the years, it's vanishing. Let's confess that, and would you please, in brief, give us some solutions or some steps?
Again, tolerance is a way of reacting to certain situations or people. So the best way of doing it is by, first of all, self-awareness. I have to be aware that I have been intolerant for quite some time, that I behaved in a way that actually I should not be behaving in. So once I realize...
admit first that I have a problem.
Yes, exactly. So once I admit, once I see that my behavior is not actually synchronized with the way I should be behaved, that in itself would help me recalculate things and start to see things from a different perspective altogether. As I said, the concept of tolerance has been besmeared, has been looked upon as negative, as passive, as weak, and therefore some people think that being intolerant, it means that you're putting your foot on the ground, and that you're saying no with a loud voice, which is actually not the case.
A show of strength, you mean?
Exactly. They think so. They think that the more intolerant you are, the stronger you are, which is not the case. Actually, intolerance means that you have no forbearance. Your level of understanding, your level of accepting the other has gone to the minimum, which is not what you should do. As a human being, as a person who has to have this kind of view of life, you need to understand more about yourself and about others. And one way of doing it is by tolerating them and understanding them. When it comes to the question of how, so the first step will be awareness. Second thing is reprogramming your subconscious mind. So I bring out the old programming, and that's how whenever I see or I encounter a certain situation that is so different from me, I just reject it. Instead of doing that, I need to learn to accept. As I said, for example, God, who created all of us, has accepted the difference. God has actually mentioned clearly that He has created different people for us to get to know them. How would you know a person if you're not tolerant of that person? So one way of doing it is to tolerate. By the way, tolerating the other does not mean accepting, and that is a very important point. So I may tolerate the existence of, for example, a person with a different religion or a different way of thinking or a different political view.
Living side
it
by
does
side.
not mean, exactly, does not mean that I accept that. It does not mean that I approve of his point of view. So I still have this thin line between approving and tolerating. So there is also a point to be.
One of the very important ideas that you raised, that we might not be in recognition of, which is that me recognizing that I have to change. If I do not tolerate, well, I come from a culture that was very dogmatic. It's just like that. So my reactions are built on the mindset of that I should react like that, and that's the rules. Exactly. I don't even have a problem, an issue whatsoever with my behavior.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
Someone should draw my attention to the fact that there is something else that exists called tolerance. I mean, sometimes people don't recognize or in denial that they need help.
As long as a person is in denial, there's no way for you to help him, by the way. It's only when the person realizes that there is something wrong, that he needs to change.
So you go to scratch again.
So yes, exactly. That's what we as life coaches do. There is no way for us to help a client, for example, to change unless that person realizes that he needs to change. And once he does that, then we help him, we guide him through. But if that person comes with denial, then tough luck. There is nothing we can do about that. So what usually happens when this soul is destined to understand and see things from a different perspective, you'll see that God will be putting on his way certain situations that would actually lead to some kind of pain or some kind of agony. Because pain and agony, they are actually the main sources for a person to stop and to start breaking this denial and to see things from a different perspective. So actually, by the way, pain is a very important messenger. He always carries with him a message that you need to change. If you're not in pain, if everything is just fine, then you'll always be doing whatever you're doing, behaving the way you're behaving. Only when there is pain that you start to realize that something went wrong, and you start here to ask yourself, what happened and how could I actually make a change? So here, the first steps of breaking the denial would come about. And then you have to tolerate the idea that you have made certain mistakes in your life, and you should seek then help in such cases.
Dr. Samaah, I'm sure that Dina and I are going to have a lot of talk with you right after we finish, because unfortunately we are running out of time and we should say goodbye to our dear viewers now. Dr. Samaah Khamis, the Honorary Ambassador of Egypt for Peace and Life Coach, thank you very much for your input. We do have a lot to speak about, so we are going to leave you, ma'am, with a promise to see you again in another episode of our breakfast.
Really my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess this brings us to the end of this edition of the Breakfast Show. Many thanks to you, Nurleen Abdulrahman.
I enjoyed my time as usual being with you, Dina.
My
Tomorrow
pleasure.
is another day with another crew, but it's goodbye for now.